Hey guys, and welcome back. We need to talk. There's a lot of words that get passed around on the internet and YouTube. One of those words is cinematic. What the heck does that even really mean? Cinematic. Well, let's dive a little deeper into this and try and figure it out. The word cinematic. I mean, really, what does it really mean? Probably means different things to different people, but from Webster's dictionary, this is what they say. Now, I'm going to read this so I don't mess it up, but by Webster's dictionary, the definition of cinematic: one, of relating to, suggestive of, or suitable for motion pictures or filming of motion pictures. Cinematic principles and techniques. Cinematic special effects. 2. Filmed and presented as a motion picture. Cinematic fantasies. A cinematic adaptation of a novel. There, clear as mud. We now know what cinematic means. I don't know. I'm probably more confused now than I was before. This isn't very definitive to what it means. It's pretty open to interpretation. So, I mean, then now let's get into cinematography versus videography. Am I a cinematographer? Am I a videographer? That one is bounced around a lot with this and is open to interpretation. Again, the definition I came up with is cinematography is more about the art and science of making a movie. Videography is primarily recording the event. So to me, it almost sounds like producer and cameraman. But again, open to interpretation, but that's the information that I found on cinematographer, videographer. Right? I'm just a YouTuber. But anyways, that is what they're saying cinematography is. Now, does cinematography mean black bars? Does that make it cinematic? How about the teal and orange look that's so cool these days? I don't know. I don't know. What about cool sound effects? Let's get a little more into this and let's try and figure all this mess out to see if we can get to a little better definition of what cinematic means. All right, now we're going to get into all different parts of what makes something cinematic. Honestly, each one of these could be a complete video on its own. So we're only going to skim the surface on each of these points because, like I say, each one you can go really in depth and bury yourself in technology and terms. But we're just going to skim the surface to come up with a general idea of what is cinematic. So the first thing we're going to look at is aspect ratio. And here is a little guide for you to give you a little hand to figure out what aspect ratios are for what. I mean, you've got the older right up to the IMAX. I use aspect ratio 16.9, and as you can see by that list, is the most common for HD TV stuff. But I think most people are doing the 16.9. Now, the next thing you want to look at is frame rate. Frame rate being 24, 30, 60, 120. That is the most common standards of frame rating. Now, 24 and 30 are the most common of the common. 24, most people say, is more cinematic than 30. Now, when you understand frame rates, what is frame rates? 24 frames per second. Well, that's 24 pictures per second versus 30 frames per second, which is 30 pictures in 1 second. So the more pictures you have in a second, the less motion blur you're going to have when you run your film back. That's why if you look back at the real old days when the old crank cameras and that, it was real jittery and blurry because of the slower frame rating. Now, anything typically above the 30 frames per second, you're starting to think of slow motion, especially in the 120. You know, you're doing in the 24, but when you're shooting at 120 frames per second, you're getting what they call that buttery smooth video. Again, don't really like that term, but you get the smoother video. So that's real quick look at the frame rating. I typically shoot 30 frames per second. Yeah, I know it's not the cinematic 24. Honestly, most times I don't really notice it. I'd have to really look to see a bit of extra blurring on the hand or the motion of the body, but I typically shoot 30 frames per second. That is up to the filmmaker's decision, but that's the typical frame rates: 24, 30, 60, and 120. Now, another thing that helps make a movie more cinematic is the depth of field. So depending on what lens you're using with your camera, you can vary the depth of field with your aperture and the lens, whether you're using a telephoto lens, a wide angle lens. But here's an example of a portrait of me, and the background's not really blurred. So you can see when you're telling a story, the focus isn't necessary on me. I mean, yes, I'm filling the frame, but it's showing so much of my environment as well. So that has to become the cameraman and director's decision to what you want and what you want the focus on. Now, here's a blurred version of that picture. Now you can see we're talking about me. You can still see elements of the background, but it's blurred out. So the focus and the attention is on me. So blurring of the background can definitely help it make it more cinematic. And in researching what cinematic means, this is one term that comes up a lot, and is having that control of the depth of field and having a more blurry background. All right, now we're going to be talking equipment: sliders, dollies, cranes, jibs, sliders. And we can't forget handheld. Handheld can give you that more organic, natural feel to it. Now, I don't have millions of dollars worth of technical equipment. I will link down below, though, some videos that I created on some DIY ways of doing cranes and jibs and sliders. And you can do it on a budget. So I'll put those in the description down below so you can check that out to get a bit more information. But you get a better control, you get better movements, and a more cinematic look when you're using the equipment, because it's not so jittery, bumpy. You're not spinning around, and you know, if you've watched some of the videos where people are whipping this way and this way, you know, it's kind of like squirrel. It's very hard to watch. So by using the mechanical equipment, you can get far better stable results by doing so. Like I say, I don't have multi-million-dollar cranes and jibs and everything. Probably couldn't even fit one of the big cranes in here anyways. Right, now we're going to be looking at camera angles. Depending on how the camera's pointed at the subject can help enhance the mood and the feeling that the producer or yourself are trying to achieve. So if you shoot up on someone, like this example, where it's shot on a slight upward, it gives them more power. They're more dominating, they're more a powerful person when they're that. Versus here, being neutral, which is shot straight on. They're not really threatening, they're not submissive, they're not overly powerful, because it's shot straight on. So there's a different feel between this powerful one and this one here. Now, what about going a little more soft, subtle, more submissive? So let's leave the powerful one up and put this one up, and you can see shooting down on the subject makes them a little more submissive. It also creates a bit more softness and a bit more vulnerability. So you can see how the camera angle plays in with this. So we're just building all this stuff up to create the effect that we want. Depth of field, you know, depending on the aperture we use, the aspect ratio, the film speed, camera angle. All this is adding in, and it's all this together that's building what we call cinematic. Now with the camera movements, we also have lighting. Huge part of photography and videography and cinematography is lighting. We can do something dramatic, or we can do something soft and subtle. By controlling the lighting and playing with the lighting, we can help set the mood. So if you shoot up on someone with dramatic lighting, you can really intensify how dominant and powerful they are. If you've got a low angle shot, you're shooting down on someone, and you've got more of that soft open lighting, it really helps play into the mood of it. So with your camera angles, your lighting, whether it's a hard lighting or a soft lighting or a mix of light, you can help set the mood. So that's another thing you've got to think about when you're creating your videos, is your lighting. Right? So hard lighting, soft lighting. Big difference between the two and different feel of the image completely. Well, now what we're going to do is I've got a clip and I'm going to show you, it's just the front part of a little cinematic video that I have done, but I've broken it down into sections and we're going to kind of put it together to try and create that more cinematic look. So first, check this clip out, and it's had no color grading, it's had no sound, and it doesn't have any black bars. So let's just run the clip so you can check it out. All right, pretty plain. Whether you're getting any emotion or feeling out of that, I don't know, but that's just straight run, basically from the camera, nothing really done to it. Now let's run that same clip again, but let's add a little bit of music and see what impact sound design has on the video, because sound design plays in huge within the movie industry. So check the same clip out now with a bit of sound added. Now, you can see what difference that makes by adding sound to that clip. You can hugely impact the feeling and the mood in correlation with everything else we've done to it. So sound can make or break your video big time. Okay, now we've got sound built in. Let's add a little more color and do a bit of color grading to the video clip. All right, you can see that adding the color and the sound, how that really pops it together. Now, the one thing we haven't done is add the black bars, but you can see how all this together comes in and really starts making it cinematic. So I'm going to play the little cinematic clip. I think it's a minute, maybe just a little less. I'll play the whole little clip complete with some sound design, some color grading, and the black bars, and see what you think of this cinematic video clip. There you are. So, did you think that was cinematic? There's a big difference between that and the first clip I showed you that really had nothing done to it other than I had put two clips together. So, when you look at everything we looked at, and there was like 9 different little topics there between lighting, depth of field, camera movements, aspect ratios, frame rates. It's not one piece. Each piece is part of a puzzle, and you need to put it all together. The better you can understand and play with each aspect of this, you know, between your frame rates, whether you're going to add in some slow motion and you've shot a higher frame rate to turn that to a slow motion clip and get the best slow motion you can, to your lighting, to your color grading, to your sound design. When you add all that together and you've done the best of your ability to it, then you've got the foundation for a good cinematic video or movie. But there's one thing that we haven't talked about that I think is more important than any of that, and that is telling the story, and telling the story well. And I think that is what makes it more cinematic than anything else, is the story that's unfolding before you. Everything else is in support of it. The lighting supports it, your lens choice and your camera choice and camera motions, angles, sound, all that is supporting of your story. So the story is the foundation and everything else is building upon it. And once you combine all that together, then I think you have what they call a cinematic movie or video. Now, most of this is my opinion. I did do a little bit of research and reading from Webster's into the dictionary, but I think, to me, that's what cinematic means. It's not just one thing. It's not just black bars or color grading. It's all that put together with a solid storyline that makes a cinematic movie. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this one. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe, hit that bell notification so you're aware when I post new videos. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. So, until the next time.